everyone, and welcome to the Popcorn Bucket List, the podcast that keeps your movie bucket list up to date because those 1,000 movies to see before you die lists are just too daunting. I'm your host and former cheerleader and gymnast, Gracie, and with me is Darrell, the slowest swimmer on his high school team, and Sarah, who's never played a sport in her entire life. Hey, guys.
Yeah. Hey.
Hello, how's it going?
Scarily enough, I think I'm the biggest sports fanatic here. I don't even know how that's happened, but it's true. I have played many sports in my life, and I watch sports, I would say, at least regularly. If I'm in a bar and sports are on, I'm going to pay attention, but I don't go out of my way to watch sport. I don't know. I watch football and some basketball. Give me a tennis match and I'll watch that.
I can tell you the last football game that I watched, quote unquote, was I actually went to see the Saints in the Superdome, and I colored in a coloring book the whole game. So
proud of you. I'm repping my team, Pelicans. Got to support the local. But if we're going to be honest, I'm probably more of a tennis fan. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Today, if you guys haven't figured out, we're discussing one of our least favorite genres, sports films, which from made-for-TV Disney movies to blockbuster and Academy Award-winning movies, sports films tend to lean two ways. They either lean to the extremely dramatic or the extremely comedic. Where do we prefer? I don't know. What is bucket list material? I'm not sure. I know according to the American Film Institute, their top 10 sports films of all time are, or were, I'm not sure, Raging Bull, Rocky, The Pride of the Yankees, Hoosiers, Bull Durham, The Hustler, Caddyshack, Breaking Away, National Velvet, and Jerry Maguire. And I know
National Velvet.
It's a horse movie.
Oh, horse movie. Nice.
It's a horse movie. On that list, I know I can say confidently I've seen 1, 2, 3 of those movies. So
I got 2. I got the first 2 on the list, Raging Bull and Rocky.
Big fat 0 for me.
Nice. Good job, everybody.
I'm really proud of us. And you can tell that this is probably one of our least. We discussed which genre was our least favorite genre. And I think it came down to sports films and war films. And we decided to save war films for later because we could probably talk about war films for a lot longer.
I really like war films. At least Vietnam and before.
Yeah. See, I like a Vietnam War film, but that's, another topic. You're right. Let's refrain. All right. So today we're going to cover some of the films that we need to discuss what is a sports film and how are we qualifying this, because in discussion with, I think, many people that I've talked about prepping for this week, we were talking about what is considered a sports film, because I know Darrell has a movie on his list that he said he wouldn't say is a sports film per se, but it contains sports. So I think that's our first discussion. What would we classify as a sports film?
That opens up a whole nother discussion of what classifies as a sport. I mean, I know that since, quarantine hit and ESPN has been digging at the bottom of the barrel to show stuff, they're showing people throwing beanbags into
Hey, that's a fun sport to watch. I mean, you have to be pretty qualified to hold a beer in one hand and throw a beanbag into a hole with another. I mean, classic field sport right there. But then again, we were talking about that, and do we qualify as a sport in which ESPN shows? Because then I would say, oh, poker then is a sport. But then Darrell mentioned, because I was arguing that I didn't think The Hustler was considered a sports film, which is a movie with Paul Newman in it. Newman.
Yeah.
Paul Newman. Yeah. And I really questioned myself real quick. I was like, whoa. And it's a movie that I never considered a sports movie because to me, billiards is not a sport. It's an art form. But that's I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I think billiards is definitely a sport though, but that's the
I
thing.
never
It's like
considered it a sport movie.
exactly.
Like The Hustler to me is a drama about a man who spends way too much time in a bar. I don't know. I mean, it's a great film. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's a great film, but I never would have put it in sports category. So definitely an interesting. I know a lot of our films, sports are tend to be the main topic of the film, if not the driving force behind the film. I think that was how we talked about picking movies for this week. I know I picked movies that I grew up with and then movies that I wanted to see that I had avoided because they were sports films. So I watched them this week. Why don't we bring it around with Darrell? What's one of your first sports movies that we think may be bucket list material?
I would go, well, actually, the first one on my list is also the first one on AFI's list. It is Raging Bull. So Raging Bull is a 1980s Martin Scorsese film, and it's about the life of boxer Jake LaMotta, whose violence and temper that led him to the top in the ring destroyed his life outside of it, according to IMDb. That is their summary of it. So yeah, it's about Jake LaMotta, who is a real life boxer. Um, and this is the movie where I feel like it's a sports movie, but it's also not a sports movie because although boxing is involved, I mean it's about a boxer. It is so much about the character and the personality of Jake LaMotta that really it's like you could take boxing out of it. You could replace boxing with pretty much any other. Actually, Martin Scorsese said this. You could replace boxing with any other career, and it would still be the same movie. Martin Scorsese
The
likened it to
Accountant,
filmmaking.
which is a movie, but totally could
Yeah,
have been different.
yeah, exactly. Because the idea behind it is that Jake LaMotta was just a very violent, very obsessive and like possessive person. And so he basically slowly ruins his life and ruins all of his relationships with, his family and his wife and everybody around him just because he can't just accept the fact that he can't control everything. And so watching it, I always kind of forget. I'm like, yeah, this is supposed to be about boxing, right? But it's not really about boxing. It's just about a guy whose life is he's just self-destructing over the course of like 20 years. The movie actually opens with it opens with him in the 1960s, I believe, where has a he has like a comedy club. Basically, he's now a comedian, and so it opens with him kind of practicing like his opening monologue. And then it cuts back to his boxing days, and we kind of see his rise in the boxing circuit and his eventual fall because of his own personal problems. Uh, and it's a really interesting exploration of somebody who, as I've said, just keeps destroying his own life. And even the way that the boxing scenes are shot, you never when during a fight, it's never the camera is never outside of the ring during the fight. It's always in the ring. You're always following Jake or you're seeing his opponent, but you're never seeing the audience. You can see the audience outside there, but they're never focused on because they're not important. They don't matter. All that matters in the ring is Jake and his opponent. Uh, and so it's a really interesting way of showing this film because you're not showing people reacting to him, reacting to his fight, saying like, "Oh, you're gonna win. Oh, he's gonna lose. Oh, I hate this guy." Blah 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 blah. It's all about him, all about his personal struggle, and I don't know. It's fascinating to watch, especially since like all the music in the film is opera music. There was no composer for it. It was just music taken from an opera. There's actually one that was also present in The Godfather Part 3. It's at the very end of that movie. So if you watch that, you'll notice the music is the exact same. Which I thought was just kind of interesting that they would play this very beautiful but also very sad music while this guy is like beating the crap out of people or getting the crap being beaten out of him. Um, and has these amazing like standout scenes that are mostly involve Jake being a violent, terrible person, like him accusing his brother of having an affair with his wife, which absolutely is not happening. But he just every time anybody says anything, he like takes it literally, and he basically is concerned. Is like, did you have sex with my wife? And his brother's like, I'm not gonna answer that question. That is so disrespectful. It's like you're crazy. Then he goes to his house and he beats him up.
Oh
And
my
like
God.
he goes and beats up his brother, and he even beats his wife too. And it's just like this guy, he doesn't understand how terrible he is. When the real Jake LaMotta saw the movie, he turned to his ex-wife and said, "Was I really that bad?" And his ex-wife was like, "You were worse than that."
Oh my
Like
gosh.
it's really really sad. Like it's depressing. It's weird to think of a terrible person in the movie and you're just sad for him because it's like you don't even know what you're doing. You don't even know how bad you are. It's really depressing. Which is why it's weird to call it like a boxing movie. Because it just doesn't feel like a boxing movie. It just feels like a movie about a guy who sucks.
How often is he in the ring? Like, how often do we see him? Like,
We
because like
see
I feel like the
him.
only shots I've ever seen, I've never seen the film, but the only shots I've ever seen from the film are him boxing.
I mean, we see him in the ring probably good like 7 or 8 times, and each and few of the scenes are very long. A lot of the movies about him trying to make his way through the boxing circuit, but people saying like he's not going to be a champion because he doesn't know how to just talk to people like a normal person. So
Mm.
it's like we're not going to let him go anywhere because he keeps playing by his own rules, and the rules don't make any sense and they're not helpful for anybody. So it's basically him fighting lots of lower tier guys and also fighting like Sugar Ray Robinson, so like big boxers,
Hmm.
eventually. But all those scenes are shot really, really well, and they're really, really interesting to watch, and there's a lot of emotion in them. But what draws you in is every scene that's not about boxing.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know. It's a testament, to Martin Scorsese's direction because he thought it was going to be his last film, so he poured everything he had into that movie.
Really?
Yeah, like he had basically suffered from like an overdose of like cocaine
Uh,
because he was addicted to drugs for a long time, and this was kind of the movie that kind of pulled him out of that because Robert De Niro really wanted to do it. And at first, Scorsese was like, "No, no, 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 I don't like boxing. It's like really violent. It's a gross sport." But then he kind of saw it as like, oh, it's like someone who's really passionate about something like filmmaking. Every time you step in the ring, you have to just be on it. Same with filmmaking. It's like once you step on set, you have to just be on it. You have to be in it. You have to be completely invested. And so that's kind of what inspired him to do this movie. And it is interesting to think that this is the one that pulled him out of his rut, I guess. Um, for him to direct a movie that ends up being considered like the greatest sports movie of all time and the best edited film in history according to the Motion Picture Editors Guild, which is a fun fact that I thought was actually really interesting. I didn't know that was a thing, the Editors Guild. But yeah, in 2012 they said this is the best edited movie ever, and I was like, that's so interesting. I find that fascinating.
that is
So
interesting.
yeah, so I
I'll have
highly
to check it
recommend you
out.
watch it. Like it's a really really well made movie, but after you've seen it one time, when you come back, you see you're like, this is kind of sad. It just feels depressing.
So would we say it's bucket list material, or are
Oh,
we
definitely,
okay?
definitely.
Okay, so we're agreeing with AFI that it's probably one of the best
Yeah, I would
films.
I would say so.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm gonna take over now because I have another kind of boxing movie that I picked. It's Warrior, the 2011 movie. It's the youngest son of an alcoholic former boxer returns home when he's trained by his father for competition in a mixed martial arts tournament, a path that puts the fighter on a collision course with his estranged older brother. I love the word estranged. I think that's a great name because that could mean anything. Um, It stars Tom Hardy, like baby Tom Hardy, Nick Nolte, and Joel Edgerton. And this is a film I caught on a lunch break during when I worked for a car dealership, and I was watching it with a friend, like someone else who worked there, and he ended up like turning to me and going, "Oh yeah, my son's a boxer in Mexico." And like he does all this money, like he gets a lot of money. And I was like, "You gonna drop that on me? Like that's so exciting." And then we ended up talking about it forever. And I literally only caught the middle of the movie. I never got to see the whole thing. So it was just something that had made such an impression on me that I wanted to revisit. I was super excited because as of what's today's date, April 12th, it's on Hulu, I believe. So if you want to check it out, definitely check it out on Hulu. It it's got some weird choices. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like if you watch it, there's a really weird montage sequence that looks like something I probably could have made in Windows Movie Maker 2005. But and no knocking the editor. I'm sure it was a specific choice of why they chose to do it like that. But it has a really weird editing choice halfway through the film where it decides to cover like a span of 4 months or whatever of them training for this. And it has some of the most beautiful moments. And I'm not a big Nick Nolte fan. Like his movies are hit and miss for me. But this movie is heart-wrenchingly beautiful for him as an actor. Like it's so hard. So basically, like he was a drunk whose family broke apart because of him, and now he's trying to repair some sort of relationship with his sons now that he's sober. And it's just, oh, there's some moments in there. He has some great monologues, and I definitely recommend this film if you even have an inkling for Tom Hardy, because I think this is another one of his. He doesn't say a whole hell of a lot. Tom Hardy's good at that, not saying a whole hell of a lot, but carrying a lot through the face. And that's probably, when was Mad Max? 2013? 14? Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is like 3 years before Mad Max, and it's just, oh yeah. I also just love watching people punch each other. I think it's so much fun. And you get a lot of it. It's not like it's not like Raging Bull where you feel like, oh, it's not a sports movie. This is a sports movie that has some drama in it. And because it's pretty heavily in the ring. So much so Joel Edgerton tore his MCL in the cage during production, and they had to halt fight scenes for 6 weeks.
Wow. And
then also Tom Hardy suffered a broken toe, broken ribs, and a broken finger throughout shooting. Like intense. And then there's another weird tidbit. Here's a weird tidbit that I thought it has a scene in Iraq that shows like a moment where it's supposed to be the middle of the war. And the location for the scenes in Iraq was actually an abandoned parking lot on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, dressed to look like a desert. And to me, that's beautiful production design. And I don't care because it made me feel like I was in the middle of the war with them. And I don't even like war scenes or movies, especially the ones that take place in Afghanistan or Iraq. To me, it's just never been my war, but it felt legit. And so I was like, oh, I'm impressed. And also Joel Edgerton is so much fun to watch in this film. Like I have always been I always like watching him in films. I think he has an interesting repertoire for his filmography, if you would say. And this one is lovely because he's a suspended school teacher who has to make money by being an MMA fighter.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. But it all makes sense, and I really like it. And it has some really cool fight sequences. And it also just does really well to like giving you the grandiose of the NBA fighting. I guess, sequences and stuff like that. It's really cool. I definitely recommend it. Bucket list. Yes, I would say it's a bucket list movie just because I think for Nick Nolte's performance, I think him and Tom Hardy have a really beautiful moment. And I think just for that scene alone, it's worth putting it down on your movie bucket list because I think that is important to see for a Nick Nolte filmography and Tom Hardy. So that's my submission for my latest.
Nice. Added to
Sarah?
the Nolte list.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so normally the type of sports movies that I gravitate towards are the ridiculous ones, like Basketball, The Water Boy. Like those are some of my faves. Dodgeball, Blades of Glory. Like there are some terrible comedy movies that like sports are just there to have a background for what's going on and really have very little to do with the movie. I think with the exception of Basketball, which is really just about basketball. But I did go for a comedy, but this one is a little more serious. Like it's kind of a bonus that it's so funny. And that's Cool Runnings from 1993. So both of the movies that I watched this week are Winter Olympics movies. And Cool Runnings is about Jamaica's first bobsled team. And so the movie starts out with a bunch of guys trying out for track for the Olympics. And one of them trips and falls, trips two other guys that are in the running for the Olympics, and none of them get in. So they have the idea to start a bobsled team because that's as close to track as they can get, and they want to be in the Olympics. So they go and find John Candy, who originally had that idea, and they recruit him as their coach. And there are just some amazing jokes along the way. It's really funny just like seeing these guys go to like the Winter Olympics and freeze their asses off, and like it's so much fun. And I would say as far as like comedic sports movies go, it's definitely one that like leans more towards the sports, and it's a great underdog story. Like you're rooting for these guys, and like it's really great, and all of the acting is amazing. The guys are all so funny and so good, and John Candy is a treat. So I would definitely
John Candy.
he's a treat. I would definitely recommend this one if you haven't seen it. It's a Disney movie. It's very, very loosely based on a true story. Apparently a lot of the characters are not real. None of them were track athletes, but yeah, there is a Jamaican bobsled team though, so that part of it's true.
Interesting. I've seen scenes from it, but I haven't seen the whole movie altogether. And so it's definitely something I probably should check out. Would you say it's bucket list?
100%. Yeah, I definitely think that everyone should see Cool Runnings. It's hilarious. It's warm-hearted, and it's a great underdog story.
Interesting. Yeah. I'll have to check it out. Because I haven't seen it all the way through, so I'll definitely have to check it out.
I like Cool Runnings. Y'all should see it. I agree.
All right, what's our who wants to take this next? Darrell, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about my next movie, which is, so you'll notice a pattern here. I apparently only like boxing movies or any movie where people get hit in the face at some point. So Creed, 2015 film directed by Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan in probably the best role for him, in my personal opinion. Because honestly, I don't like him as an actor that much, but I think
but Black Panther is.
I mean, I feel like I don't know.
That role is so.
I feel
good.
like it works, but it's like he could have done something a little different. I would have been happier. But whatever. I digress. I could go on and on about Michael B. Jordan, I guess.
Chronicle? You mean you don't like him in
I do
Chronicle?
like Chronicle, but I think that like Creed is the movie where I saw him and I was like, okay, this fits him so
Okay. Okay.
well.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
It fits
We'll
his
talk
it
about
fits his
Chronicle
range
another
very
day.
well. Yeah, we can talk. I like Chronicle. We can talk about that some other day. But so, in case you haven't heard of Creed, I'm going to read to you the IMDb summary again. The former world heavyweight champion Rocky Balboa, it's a Rocky movie, serves as a trainer and mentor to Adonis Johnson, the greatest name of all time, the son of his late friend and former rival Apollo Creed. So yeah, it's basically about Apollo Creed's son. So this is a movie where I'm not a big fan of the original Rocky. I think I don't dislike the movie. I just kind of think it's a little boring. So I don't know. I'm not a huge Rocky fan. I have not seen the subsequent films except for Creed. Creed was the movie that got me thinking, you know what, I should probably go back and watch the rest of them just because it's really entertaining. Like I said, I think it's the perfect role for Michael B. Jordan because it has this he gets to be very intense, which he's very good at, but he also gets to be very personable, which I feel like a lot of the movies he's been in recently, ever since Black Panther, he's just kind of typecast as like intense, smoldering black man who doesn't get to do anything else.
Yeah, he
And
has a new TV show or movie coming out
yeah, it's
where
like a
that's
Tom Clancy
literally,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like a Rainbow Six, one of those.
Yeah, and it's for me. I'm like, I don't like that. Again, I can't say if Michael B. Jordan is like a good or bad actor based on those because he just keeps doing the same stuff. Except in Just Mercy, I haven't seen Just Mercy. I like to watch it because I know that he has to be different in that one. But I think this movie fits him very, very well, um, and because he gets to be someone who I feel like could be a very real person. Um, because Adonis, he goes by Donnie in the film. Donnie is, he's his whole life he's been a fighter. He's someone who has spent his entire life fighting for himself, fighting to prove himself, because he's actually like the bastard son of Apollo Creed. He's not like, he wasn't Apollo Creed's wife's son. And
Ah,
so he gets found in like a juvenile detention center, and they're like, "Can you?" Basically, Apollo Creed's widow is like, "Hey, you want to come live with me? Because apparently you're my husband's son, and I'd like to take care of you now." And so he's basically living the high life. He's rich, so he can do whatever he wants, but he just wants to fight. He doesn't really want all that he already has. He wants something more. He wants to prove that he is worthy to be the son of, in the universe of Rocky, like the greatest boxer of all time. And so it's really interesting watching him as a character, um, growing and becoming more and more understanding of what it actually means to have your own legacy. Uh, So yeah, overall, it's a really, really good film. I love the music because the music is interesting because it's mostly the theme from Rocky, but it
they
has
just reuse the theme over and over.
well, no, it's a different version of the theme
Okay.
that they use throughout the film, and it never feels overused or it never feels like it's too much. It feels just right. It's like a nice little modernized version with like kind of some little piano riffs of the theme, and you're like, yeah, that fits. There's this great scene, my favorite scene in the movie. It's one of the training montages. So he's about to fight like the last guy in the movie, um, and so he's like training for the biggest fight of his life. This guy is like, this guy has won every fight he's ever been in. And he's like, first of all, he's an actual real life boxer. He's playing a fictional boxer, but he's a real boxer. All the boxers in this movie are real boxers, except for Michael B. Jordan, even though he looks like one in this. But so he's training, and the classic Rocky kind of training things like to punch in the meat and stuff. He doesn't quite do that, but he has his own version of it. Um, and of course, it takes place in Philadelphia. So in Philadelphia, at least in the movie, there's like groups of people in the African American community who have like motorbikes and stuff, and so they just kind of like run around on either like their small motorbikes or their four wheelers, just rolling around, like revving their engines all the time. And so like at this point, people know who Donnie is. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're Apollo Creed's son." So they have like this cool slow motion montage where he's like running down the street and you see just like these bikes just like popping wheelies like around him, and the music is just like swelling, and it's like, oh, this just feels so good. It's the scene that kind of reminded me why people like Rocky so
Mhm.
much, because Rocky kind of has that, like, as it's a trope of those movies, and you can I really felt that. I really felt like, yeah, this just gets me excited for whatever is going to happen next. Um and it's a movie that's filled with honestly lots of great scenes because it has Michael B. Jordan and Tessa Thompson. That's the who's the romantic lead. And first of all, she's always amazing. She's always great. And in this one, she is hearing impaired, so she actually has two hearing aids that she wears. And a big question in the film is like, what do you fear the most? And um, Donnie's always like, well, do you fear like losing your hearing? And she's like, not really, because I knew that this was going to happen, so I'm just going to enjoy making music, which is what she does, like for as long as I can. Like I know what's going to happen. I don't want to be afraid of that. And Donnie's biggest fear is being seen as like a fake, being seen as like not worthy of his father's legacy. And it's interesting watching him deal with that fear. And I find the hearing loss of Tessa Thompson's character very interesting because it mirrors his progression so well. It's just such a good example of looking at a character who's accepted who has accepted their fate and is no longer afraid, and one who is yet to learn and yet to accept it.
Good
um
parallel.
yeah, and of course that same story goes with Rocky Balboa himself, of course, reprised by Sylvester Stallone, who doesn't really want to train Donnie at all, just because he's like, "Look, I got nothing left in my life. My wife's dead. My best friend's dead. I got nothing. I'm just waiting." Literally, he's like, "I'm just waiting to die." But Donnie kind of gives him a reason to continue on, and it's just kind of nice to see that even when it feels like there's nothing left for you, you can always find something to inspire you to get back in the game a little bit. Um, so yeah, very entertaining movie, great cinematography, awesome one take of one of the big fights in the movie where it's just camera is inside the ring for a whole like 7 minutes as he's fighting this other boxer, again a real boxer, which is just really incredible. Michael B. Jordan like fighting against real boxers. It's really, the choreography is amazing, but the cinematography there is really cool because it's a one take as he's fighting, and eventually, of course, wins that fight. And you're just like, how did you do this? This is so incredible because that choreography is so amazing and so specific. Like you can't get it wrong. It took them 13 tries and they used like the 11th take, and that's amazing to me.
Classic
Um
Kubrick right there.
Really, it really is. But yeah. Yeah, it's a really good movie. Now, is it bucket list material? I think I'd say yeah. I mean, I'd say Rocky is just because you gotta see Rocky, but skip the other ones, then go watch Creed, because Creed will make you feel like, oh wow, a modern version of Rocky that just kind of like feels different. I don't know, maybe it resonates more with me because it's an African American protagonist. Um, but when I watch that movie, I guess I feel very impressed when I watch it. This is all because this is also Ryan Coogler's only his second feature film.
Oh wow.
This was only his second one, and it's an incredibly well directed movie. It shocks me every time I think about it. I'm just like, how did you make this work? You're not allowed. Then he goes on to make Black Panther, and you're just like, oh my god, he's too good. He's too good for us. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts on Creed.
Okay. I've seen Rocky. I don't remember a whole heck of a lot about it. I feel like I probably saw it when I was a lot younger. I remember Apollo Creed being my favorite character, probably because he was wearing the bright, blue and red
Yeah,
and
the
white,
stars and stripes.
yeah, stars and stripes shorts. And like I only know like the one or two scenes, like the montage scene of him fighting or whatever training, and then I know like the Yo Adrian scene, and I feel like it didn't really resonate with me. Like what resonates with me is images of the film being great,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it. And that's probably why I just didn't see Creed, is because it wasn't something that had resonated with me. But listening to you talk about it makes me want to watch it even more, because I do really like Michael. I like Michael B. Jordan. I like watching things he's in, because I think he's fun to watch. I think he takes a role and he has fun with it. And I feel like even if it's a super serious role, I feel like he does that really well. Like there are people who don't do super serious roles just because they can't handle it, and I'm okay with that, for that being him. But
Yeah, he could definitely handle it. That's definitely for sure. I just wish he got to do something a little different.
yeah.
So
Sarah, have you seen Rocky?
No, I haven't seen Rocky, but now I want to watch Creed.
It's interesting that it's considered one of the greatest movies of all time, and to me it just never resonated with me. And I don't know, maybe it's something like, didn't grow up in that time and I don't resonate with that like character. Like Sylvester Stallone's character doesn't, I don't know, because I like movies about like guys who work really hard to get like, like I'm not saying that the character doesn't resonate with me. I don't know. It's just, maybe it's long.
I don't know. I don't even know if it's long. I don't know what it is about it. It doesn't work for me. But I need to rewatch it. I'm sure.
So yeah, I was gonna say maybe I need to
sure
revisit it and revisit that, and then watch Creed so that I can appreciate Creed to its full potential. On that note, talking about one of Rocky and Creed, I watched a movie that I had avoided for a really long time because I like, there are certain movies that I like to watch, and I'm not big on do we call them biopics or biopics? Because I have heard
biopics.
Okay, so I remember getting in an argument with someone because someone kept telling me it was biopics, and I'm like, that sounds stupid. It's a biography picture, biopic. But I digress. Whatever, if you want to say it, I'm gonna call it a biopic. I'm not really big on a lot of biopics because I find that they either stretch the truth or they what's the word I'm looking for?
They exaggerate
it for, it to be more cinematic and things like that. So I find that those tend to either get me pumped up about something, and then I go and look up more, and then they found out that it's not at all like that.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, well, you should have just told me the story. Like, like you could have left out this climactic part. But I ended up watching the third on the AFI sports list, Pride of the Yankees, which is one my parents both, when I said I was doing sports for this week, they both were like, oh, you need to watch Pride of the Yankees. Well, they said a couple other movies, but Pride of the Yankees was the one they both mentioned. It's the story of the life and career of Lou Gehrig. And Lou Gehrig, if you don't know, is the namesake for the disease ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. It's I guess the basic way of, it's the slow deterioration of your control of your muscles. And that's probably a super loose way of describing it. And I'm sure you could look it up. You could look up Lou Gehrig's disease. Steve Gleason for the Saints had it, and he's a major football player for the Saints and major well-known man in our area, I know, and I don't know about anybody else, or if he's big anywhere else, but he like made like the touchdown for the Super Bowl. Like it was a big deal for the Saints. But Lou Gehrig is an interesting life story. It's with Gary Cooper and Teresa Wright, and Babe Ruth actually plays himself, which I think is kind of fun. It was only released though 17 months after Lou Gehrig died.
Oh.
And
Wow.
to me, that's like super heartbreaking to think about. Like, and I can only imagine like how early into production, like maybe it's 17 months from production. I don't know, but it says released 17 months after he died. So that's a year and some change. This film is so good. And I had so much, well, one, I like Gary Cooper. I love watching Gary Cooper and everything. I think he was the perfect casting choice for Lou Gehrig. I think he brings the levity of the situation of being a baseball player and, you know, just being some guy who didn't want to be a baseball player, but he was good at it. And so he played. Basically, Lou Gehrig held the record for most consecutive games played. He played like 2,006 or 2,150 games or something like that. It was something outrageous. I think I butchered the number. I think it's like 300. I don't know. And it only was beat in 1995 by a baseball player of the name of Cal Ripken Jr., which has its own sports, movie conspiracy behind it too. Like, I guess I could go into it. Not that these guys know anything about Cal Ripken Jr. or care about it, but they supposedly it's a conspiracy theory. It's not proven, and everybody's denied it. So but for funsies, I'll tell you, supposedly while trying to keep his record up, they canceled a game due to power outage so that he didn't have to miss a game. And the theory is that he would have missed the game because he found out his wife was cheating on him with Kevin Costner. Which
just still doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. But if you really think about it, I mean, sports movie guy, he's always playing a baseball player. I mean, I don't know. It's a reference, and I think that it's totally relevant to this conversation. Not really, but so be it. If we want to discuss more conspiracy theories
and
regarding
Kevin Costner's infidelity,
Kevin Costner and Cal Ripken Jr., we can do that on another day. But back to Pride of the Yankees. It's interesting because this is probably one of the first and only biopics that I've read that the person who has lived it said that nothing was wrong with the film. And maybe it's just because there was no frame of reference or, that kind of thing. But Lou Gehrig's wife said that apparently Goldwyn, I believe producer or director, promised Eleanor Gehrig that the movie would be changed just the way she wanted it if there was anything that she didn't like. So she said that after seeing the movie in the projection room, she said, I told him of my great gratitude for the fine treatment and the careful attention to every detail. I didn't ask for one solitary deletion or addition. I accepted the picture exactly as it was made. That's how good I think it is. And I think that's nice because I watched I watched I, Tonya for this episode. I ended up not wanting to talk about it because I felt like it didn't have enough sports in it. I mean, it's about sports, but whatever. It's more about the controversy behind Tonya Harding and Nancy Kerrigan and her husband. It's more about their relationship. And but I was reading some facts about I, Tonya, and she was saying like, oh, wasn't that like close to what was like, she was like, I wish I'd said this, I wish I'd done that, like that kind of thing. Like it was a stretch to dramatize the situation, I guess. And I think it was really refreshing to see her good graces about the film. And I think it's interesting. So she, the actress who plays her in the film was not a little known actress, because this is her um, third movie, I believe, and the third consecutive Academy Award nomination.
Wow.
So she just like jumped right in. And she's phenomenal. Her name is Teresa Wright. And Eleanor Gehrig basically said she wanted Barbara Stanwyck to be her, because she felt like she would understand the role, and she would like understand her like turmoil and stuff like that. But she said, but now I know no one could have been better or even as well as little Teresa. Of course, she's prettier and younger, but then no woman could object to that, could they? So I think that's really nice. Like, I also love like imagining it with Barbara Stanwyck is like a whole nother situation, I think. And it was one of those movies that has like a bunch of little tidbits of trivia, because it's, you know, from that golden age of cinema. So they have a bunch of like, you know, fun things about it. One, Babe Ruth plays himself. He missed a lot of shooting and a lot of scenes because he was sick himself during the shooting of the film. And then there was another one where Gary Cooper didn't like baseball. And only did the film because he owed Samuel Goldwyn a favor.
Well,
So yeah. Also another, not conspiracy theory, because it's not to the same level. I guess it's like one of those urban legends or something like that, was that so Lou Gehrig was famously left-handed. He was a southpaw, and it was like everybody knew that was like a big deal for him and things like that. But Gary Cooper was right-handed, and so the urban legend was that they filmed all his batting scenes flipped. So like they filmed it and then in post flipped it. So he had to like wear a jersey with it like written on like backwards, and he had to run to third base, and it was like all this like crazy urban legendy stuff. But according to I hope I'm not butchering this right, Tom Schieber, who is a curator at the National Baseball Hall of Fame, he has said that Cooper did not learn to bat left. So he did indeed learn to bat left-handed, and that he never wore the Yankees jersey backwards, and that they only flipped the footage once, and it was during a montage scene in his minor league days, which is like a super quick moment. So I thought that was interesting, especially because that was like one of my, like the first things my dad called me. He was like, oh, they filmed all the scenes backwards. and I think that's just because it would have been funny. And I agree with him. I think it is kind of funny to think about. Like, well, Gary Cooper by this point is a big known actor. Let's not teach him how to bat left-handed, you know. But they did say that he had to work on batting left-handed because he couldn't hit well, one, it's impressive that he could hit a ball at all, but he couldn't hit with the same ferocity as Lou Gehrig could, or at least fake it until you make it kind of thing. He had a couple of stunt doubles, I guess you would say, but yeah, that one's interesting. I don't know. I think this is a bucket list film for me because, well, one, it's considered one of the greatest. Two, it's like an American tale. Is about an immigrant family who wants the best for their kid, and he ends up playing baseball, and it's romantic. It's a wonderful story about, you know, a woman who falls in love with this version of a man and then because he has this disease, his body starts to slowly deteriorate. And it's heart-wrenching because, I mean, the disease is heart-wrenching to watch anybody go through. And I think it's a beautiful glimpse into his life. If you like don't know anything about Lou Gehrig, I think it's a great story. And it starts with him getting into baseball, and then it ends right after his retirement speech, which is the famous moment of "I consider myself the luckiest man in the world." And I probably just butchered the line, so I'm sure I'll get hell for that later. But that, that's like considered one of, that's why they made the movie. They wanted to make it so that they could film the speech, which I think is interesting. But it's heart-wrenching, but it also has some great comedic moments. There are some great moments with Teresa Wright and Gary Cooper, and it's also cool to watch, knowing now that Gary Cooper is like seasoned actor at this point, and then you have Teresa Wright, who's 3 movies into acting. Like, it's cool to watch them play off each other. So I think it's definitely a bucket list watch, at least on my opinion. Have either of you seen it?
No, but I want to see it. It sounds interesting, and it is on my like movie poster, like 1,000 movies to see before you die list. So I guess I have to.
It's on Amazon Prime. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, if you want to watch that, definitely recommend it. So Sarah, what's your next addition to our sports movie bucket list?
Okay. So both of the sports movies that I watched this week were at the recommendation of my husband, Matt. Cool Runnings is one of his favorites. And as far as Miracle goes, neither of us had seen it, but he actually read about the head coach in like one of his history courses, Herb Brooks. So this movie from 2004, it's got Kurt Russell as Herb Brooks, is as much a Cold War film as it is a sports film. Like it's very much like the intense story about the US trying to beat Soviet Russia at their game, hockey, in the Olympics in 1980.
Typical.
So yeah. It's got some really, really great like underdog kind of story to it. Like the US team was like way younger, and like a lot of the Soviets had been like playing hockey together for like 15 years, and it has some like really, really great inspirational scenes. I love Kurt Russell, and I thought that his performance was really amazing. And like hockey is so intense. Like I'd put it under boxing for sure, but geez, like, they're just beating each other up on the ice, and like all the like training that he put them through was like crazy. I think there was like 2 montages in this movie, but both of them were fantastic. And by the time that they got to like the Olympic game versus Soviet Russia, I was literally screaming the goalie's name at the TV. I'm like, this must be what it feels like to root for someone while you're watching sports, because I'm like, come on, Craig. Like it was great. But I really enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to. I was like, all right, sure, yeah, I have to watch a sports movie. If you really feel this passionate about wanting to watch it, I'll watch it with you, Matt. And I loved it a lot more than I thought I would. It was really fun, and I think it just like had like a lot of layers because of just like the Olympics being such high stakes, and then like the whole Cold War, like trying to beat Russia at everything that we could. And yeah, all the performances were great, and they did like the standard, like showed all the guys at the end and like who they like portrayed and like what all of those like hockey players are doing like now. Half of them are in real estate and everything. It was fun. But yeah, and I also realized after that both of the movies that I watched are Disney movies. But yeah, I actually I'm not really sure how true to the original story this one was. It felt very much like a biopic. But I don't know how many liberties were taken. I know Disney's pretty good at taking its liberties, so I'd have to
Yeah.
look more into that. But
Like,
as a
I mean,
film,
yeah,
it was great.
Disney does some really good sports films. I was like trying to think. I
Yeah.
was like, okay. And like I made the joke at the beginning, like made for TV Disney movies, and neither of the ones that you talked about were made for TV. But I was like thinking about all the like I loved one of my favorites was like Double Teamed, which was about the like two sisters who played basketball together.
Uh-huh.
And I remember like that scene like resonates with me so much, or that movie resonated with me so much as a kid. So like they do make some really good sports films. I believe they have like the surfing ones and the rollerblading ones and all the
Luck of the
different.
Irish, which is
Oh
definitely
yes,
based on a true story.
Luck of the Irish. That's a classic one where he has to play against the leprechaun to
Yes, because
to
or he'll
win
become a
his.
leprechaun.
Yeah. That's a good one. I like that one. But that pretty much. What's up?
Oh, nothing.
Would you say it's a bucket list movie?
I wouldn't put it on mine, but I'm not a sports movie fan, okay? Like it was really fun. It also had some great music in it. Dream On by Aerosmith and Don't Fear the Reaper.
Oh.
It was great. It was very 80s and like I did really enjoy watching it, but like I don't know. I don't know if as like a non-sports movie enthusiast, I would put it on my bucket list, and I don't know if I'd watch it again. But I thought the performances were great and I really liked it and it got me pumped. But yeah, I don't gravitate towards sports movies, so I wouldn't put it on my bucket list. But if you do love sports movies, you should probably watch it.
That one's
Well,
also on my poster, so I gotta watch it now.
Really?
Let me know what
Yeah.
you think. I'd be
Interesting.
curious.
So I think I'm gonna round this one out with just my last film I wanted to talk about. So, and I think we all kind of want to talk about movies that kind of resonate with us like this. So I know growing up, a lot of the sports movies I tend to gravitate to were the comedies, and we didn't really talk. We talked about Cool Runnings, but the other ones we weren't really. They're not comedies at all. I know. One of my favorites growing up was like Kicking and Screaming with Will Ferrell. She's the Man was a favorite of mine, especially with my soccer team, which is the one with Amanda Bynes, and it's the ripoff of the Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, I believe.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yep.
Yes, yes. It has the classic scene of her shoving a tampon up her nose because, you know, why would a guy have a tampon? Yeah. I don't know. It has some really good scenes in it. And then another big one I grew up with was Bring It On, which is the cheerleading movie with Kirsten Dunst and I want to say Gabrielle Union.
So good. So good.
Yeah. And it has, I mean, it's cringy. Like if you watch it now, there are moments where you're like, oh my God, but it has so many quotable lines. Like as I do this, I'm like, these aren't spirit fingers. These are spirit fingers. And I love, as a former cheerleader, I loved that film. And I loved all the iterations of that one. The Hayden Panettiere came out probably around the time that I was a cheerleader. So that one really resonated with me. I think that has Solange in it. Beyonce's sister, I want to say Solange Knowles. Yeah. And Rihanna, which is the other one. They're like competing for Rihanna's music video, you know, like it's
okay.
You know, super fun. But actually, I revisited Bring It On a couple of months ago, but I found one that like was hidden in the back of my brain as something that I always loved, which was Stick It. And it's a I believe it's 2006 film directed by the same director of Bring It On, which I thought was kind of funny. But it has Jeff Bridges in it, who I completely forgot was in this film. And it's after running with the law, Haley Graham is forced to return to the world from which she fled some years ago, enrolled in an elite gymnastics program run by the legendary Burt Vickerman, Jeff Bridges. Haley's rebellious attitude gives way to something that just might be called team spirit.
It sounds like a spy film.
I remember this one. I did see Stick It.
But it has some great moments in it, because it's like, it's a big like F you to certain generations of gymnastics, especially because I used to be a gymnast. They have all these different rules that you have to abide of. Like, you can't pull on your leotard, out of your butt crack, or that's a deduction of pulling a wedgie, that can't happen. You can't have a bra showing, that's a deduction. And like, that's like a big scene, is like, she performs a perfect score and her bra showing, so she gets a deduction for it. And it's just one of those like female empowerment, defeats of like, it was like, baby Grace was like super excited to like stick it to the man.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, literally. And as a former gymnast, it's also just one of those movies that it like brings back watching those movies like sleepovers with the team or things like that. So I don't know, anybody have those?
I remember a big part of that movie too is like her, like every time she would like stick a landing, she'd do like the devil horns, rock and roll hands. Like,
yeah, she did like the clap with the grips on, and that's like a big moment in there. I love that. So I wanted to be her growing up, definitely. So, but does anybody have like nostalgic, silly sports films that may not be bucket list material, but they're fun to watch? Because like Kicking and Screaming is one of my other ones. I just love Will Ferrell in that one.
Well, number one for me is always going to be Space Jam, because
yes,
that is sports and it is Looney Tunes, and it's like, that was how it's one of those movies where like the only reason why I ever knew who Michael Jordan was because of Space Jam. That was how important that movie was. I was like, I know that sports guy because he was in Space Jam.
I love that. No, but probably the same for me. I love Space Jam. That's a classic. You can't go wrong. I'm actually really excited about the new one coming out with LeBron.
Yeah, I'm very
maybe
curious
it's because
about that.
Anthony Davis is in it, and I'm like pumped for that. But also because it's not limited to Looney Tunes, it sounds like.
It's like here's just a bunch of existing IP in one
you
movie.
Exist in the Warner Brothers universe. Here you go.
Here's a Clockwork Orange in the background, Game of Thrones over here. It's like,
exactly.
I don't know, but they had like a 2D version of LeBron James at one point in that trailer, and I was like, okay, that's cool. I want that. Give me
I'm
that.
gonna watch it. I'm gonna definitely watch it, and I'm kind of excited for that one. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode. My name is Gracie, and you can find me at Gracie May with a Y and 3 E's on anywhere you see fit. I will definitely be retweeting some stuff about sports. So if you have any sports, stuff, that's me. Go to me for sports, but the other two, probably not. Darrell, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Darth Darrell. That's Darth as in Vader, or Maul, or Sidious. Take your pick. And Darrell, that's Darrell.
All right. And Sarah?
Yeah, I'm snotty_person on Twitter and snotty.person on Instagram. And that's snotty with an IE, not a Y.
All right. And if you have any interest in following our podcast on any of the social medias, which if you're listening to this, I would hope you would at least give us a follow or a like anywhere. Check us out for the latest movie news at the Popcorn Bucket List on Instagram and at TPB_podcast on Twitter, or just find us wherever you guys get your social media needs. I don't know. I don't think we have a TikTok, but we don't need a TikTok. It's fine. We don't belong on that, app. But tune into our YouTube channel if you want to see our beautiful faces talking about sports and, our lovely attire of sports attire, which came across as a Pelicans shirt. Sarah's thrown together sports announcer outfit, and Darrell definitely coming in
button down.
a button down. He's just won the game. He's coming in to give the interview.
Yeah, I'm going to Disney World. That's what I'm doing next in this specific shirt.
But we upload videos every Friday after our podcast release. And if you want to, just check us out, give us a listen, send us any things you want us to talk about, maybe ask us some questions. We'd love to hear it. But yeah, look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening. Bye.